From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here with you on a Thursday. A good show on tap. We're going to invite you to join in the conversation as always. This is a live and direct show, and we'll be putting the phone number up there if you have a question or comment, all right? If you've been in a situation where, you wonder whether or not you got the proper care at a hospital or a misdiagnosis by a doctor or something that could go along the lines of malpractice and what that means, as always, we'll define that for you. But this is when you want to call, ask some questions, get some idea on whether or not you potentially have a case, or if you just have a general question. Our guest this morning, to me, I have learned probably more from him than just about any other guest that's ever been on this show. And part of the reason is he is a regular, but I have learned so much about the medical profession and legalities when it comes to malpractice and the like. He's excellent, and we're going to talk to him this morning. And that would be malpractice attorney Clint Kelly joining us on Zoom. Good morning to you, Mr. Kelly. And let's just remind folks, you are not at the beach somewhere.
I am not.
No, it sure looks good.
This is my Zoom background from a golf course I played years ago, but it makes me feel good when I see it.
No, me too. I would. I know you and I both would love to be there right now. So, but hey, we've got a good show here, and it's good to see you, Clint. And as always, we'll open up the phone lines and take those calls. The idea of malpractice, and I haven't asked you this in a while since you've been on, but just the basic definition in your mind of what it means to have a malpractice case. Malpractice doesn't necessarily mean you had a bad result at a hospital, because sometimes there's nothing that can be done about that. What is a malpractice case?
Yeah, it's a major medical mistake. Major medical injury produced by a major medical mistake. It is a typical situation would be a case where there's an amputation caused by a blood clot that wasn't managed properly, spinal cord injury leading to paralysis where blood pressure wasn't managed properly. We've had cases where there have been medical batteries where the wrong hand was operated on, the wrong child was operated on. The difference between this and a bad outcome, as you were suggesting, is this a case where doctors or nurses violated the rules, and those rules are there to protect patients, and when those violations produce injuries, then you may have a case.
Gotcha. Well, listen, Clint, we're going to take calls and we'll cover a lot of ground here, but you are one of the attorneys, probably the main one, involved in a lawsuit litigation right now that we've reported on, involving a Gallatin nursing home facility that had some real issues early on during the pandemic with COVID-19 outbreaks. And I wonder if you can give us an update on that. And then I have a follow-up question along those lines about what I've heard from a lot of people of late. But where does that lawsuit stand? And have you added more plaintiffs?
Sure. We have about 20 different families of residents who passed away as a result of the negligence of the nursing home, and I'm going to be filing those lawsuits very soon. But the first lawsuit, which is the lead lawsuit, is Bolton versus Gallatin Rehabilitation Center. The nursing home grabbed that case out of state court and put it into federal court, arguing that there's a federal pandemic statute that applies to this case, and we're battling over that legal issue right now because my clients insist that that statute does not apply to nursing home negligence. It was enacted to protect vaccine manufacturers who are testing new vaccines, like what we're hearing about with Eli Lilly and Johnson & Johnson, the COVID vaccine. There's legal protection to those manufacturers to allow them to basically warp speed that vaccine. That's what the statute's meant to apply to, but the nursing home is contending that it applies to failure to give masks to employees and failure to send employees home and things like that, which statute was never meant for. So we fully expect, maybe within the next day or two, that the federal court will enter an order and send that case back to Gallatin, where we can then begin to take depositions.
Yeah, it's crazy, the twist and turns on something like that. I wanted to ask you then, too, you talk about negligence in a nursing home, and these cases deal with COVID. I have heard, and I've posted on my Facebook page from an awful lot of people, the concern, and I think you'll probably agree with me. In fact, I think I learned this from you. In these nursing home facilities now that many of them, because of COVID-19, are shut down. The nursing home residents can't really leave, and loved ones can't go in. You can Zoom them, or you can, talk to them on the phone, or maybe talk to them through a window. And I understand all that. But the problem is, for many folks, is there's no one able to go in and visit a loved one and see them personally and be around them to see if they're not getting the care they should be getting. And it's almost like, some of these nursing home facilities I've been investigating, they know no one's watching. And so they're putting patients in double diapers and there's bed sores. They're not giving them meds. In fact, I've gotten reports of some of the nursing home staff and nurses eating patients' desserts and meals before they even bring it into them. Crazy stuff like that, because there's no family or anyone there to supervise or watch or say, hey, what's wrong with my loved one, because they can't get in. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I had thought that these many of the nursing homes had opened up to some extent, and basically as the governor opened up the state, I thought that there were more visits allowed, and I thought there was more interaction, but maybe there's not, and maybe that. Let me tell you, I think what happened at Gallatin has affected so many nursing homes across the state. Because they don't all know exactly what happened at Gallatin. And when you think that the virus is somehow can't be contained or can't be prevented, then of course you're going to be scared. The sad thing was what happened at Gallatin was preventable. It was just look at the other nursing homes who didn't have outbreaks, Nick. It was something that could have been contained very easily once it got in, and it wasn't. And so that's a shame that those things are happening. And I'll tell you, the loneliest death was these people who died at the hospital after you got COVID. There's a commercial out, a campaign commercial from the Lincoln Project that shows someone in a hospital gurney in a dark room dying from COVID by themselves. And it truly is the loneliest death there is. And that's what makes these deaths so tragic. These people who we're going to probably die some much sooner than others, or who were crippled but expected their family to be holding their hands when they left the earth, and they're just stuck in a hospital room and nobody's around.
Yeah.
Sad way to die.
Just awful. Well, so with regard to some of these types of cases, now I know some legislation was passed here in the state, not at the federal level, that might have involved providing some protections for nursing home facilities if this happens. Now, your cases came prior to any of this passing. Does that affect you, and is that going to affect any future cases? Because look, I have no problem with issues where sometimes you do everything right and COVID gets in, and then it's not your fault. But when there's clear-cut negligence, I have a real problem with any legislation that's going to protect someone if they've been just incompetent in dealing with it.
Yeah. Our cases against the Gallatin Nursing Home are grandfathered. So the new law doesn't affect our cases, and that was by design. That was because our legislator, GOP majority leader, made absolutely certain that our cases would be protected from the new legislation. That's Will Amberth. He did that to his credit. The answer to your second question is all future cases brought after August 3rd are going to be subject to this law. And Nick, the law makes it almost impossible to sue. That's how tough it is.
Well, okay, and I guess we touched on that before. I just want our viewers, who are, of course, constituents, to understand this, all right? It provides protection for what I imagine is a powerful lobby for these facilities. But, when you say it makes it impossible, you're talking about cases of clear-cut negligence. Again, I understand you can do everything right and COVID still gets in, and then I don't think it's someone's fault. But negligence, how is this law going to protect, say, a nursing home that knows there's cases and then frivolously chooses not to put in masks, not to isolate patients? To me, that is not only civilly a liability, that, in my opinion, should be criminal. That should be attempted homicide. Okay, so how is it that this lawsuit would protect a place that is that incompetent?
Okay. Well, first of all negligent acts are immune. So you can be careless, doesn't matter. You're not going to be held accountable in court. The law requires proof by clear and convincing evidence. That's almost the standard for criminal conduct. That the nursing home was reckless. So I'll give you an example. Suppose, as you got the example you're talking about, where they are not providing PPE to their staff, they know it's risking their patients, but for whatever reason, they just don't care. Okay?
Yeah, right.
First of all, there's a safe harbor in the law where if they don't have enough PPE protection, even if they don't order enough, too bad, they're immune. If they make the decision not to protect their patients just for some purpose, maybe they want to save money, well, then you get to the next step and you got to prove that their decision was the cause of the patient's death. Well, infections can come to the nursing home through many different ways. And some of those ways may be through family members, okay? The law used to be you prove what the most likely cause is, and then you can hold the nursing home accountable. All the nursing home's got to say is, hey, you may have got it from a family member, boom, immunity. So, as I told you, it's just almost impossible. And I'm not talking about just nursing homes now. This applies to restaurants. This applies to gymnasiums. This applies to workout facilities. This applies to restaurants. You go down the list. And hospitals. So what they've basically done is said, if you get COVID-19 by going to any of these establishments, forget suing.
I'm sorry. It's unbelievable to me. And the people out there that, think, well, that's fine. You got to protect businesses. And I understand that. And it needs to be fair. Just wait until it's one of your loved ones that gets exposed because of negligence, and then you can't do anything about it. And, the bigger picture of this is not just getting the relief for the families that suffer, Clint, but it's also, as you've said time and again, the only time to get change to make sure that it doesn't happen again is to make them feel it in their pocketbook. And if they don't feel it in their pocketbook, I don't know why any of these facilities then would say, well, let's spend a little more money to do things right because, hey, we can get away with it if we get busted. Is that it?
Yeah. You may have noticed the COVID-19 infections are now on the increase in Tennessee.
Yep.
We haven't felt it here in Nashville, but we will. In the meantime, people have been going to restaurants. They've been going to Lowe's. They've been going to other places. Some places are not cleaning their inside as well as they should. They're not maintaining social distance in those places as they should. Watch when people start getting sick, some die, and they said, I went to such and such restaurant and dined out, and that's where I got sick. And you find out 5 or 6 or 7 people got sick there. Too bad. The restaurant's going to be immune from suit. And that's what I'm saying. Bad laws make bad policy. And this was a bad law because it basically makes it there's no punishment for failing to protect your patrons. It's that simple.
Yep. Listen, we'll go to a break. And if someone's wondering, well, why would lawmakers support something like that when they have constituents? Because it's money. And these organizations and businesses have powerful lobbies. And it's money. It's money. Period. End of story. Listen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Clint, we've got some phone calls for you. We'll get to those. Joe, Margaret, and others. Got lines open. We were talking about COVID there with Clint, but again, it's about malpractice in general, so we can talk about those cases, and we can go beyond that if you have other questions, maybe personally about something you, a loved one, or a friend is dealing with, and you wonder if you potentially have a case. We'll take a break and be back more with Clint Kelly right after this.
Remember your why.